Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion. This week, again, we've got a pre-recorded webinar, but Heather's going to be on site to answer any questions. It's a problem, isn't it, when the team is out everywhere with teams on client sites, people attending client meetings, etc., etc. So it's getting busier and busier as the marketplace. So this week we're going to look at why your consultants or are your clients, going to save you as the UK economy slowly recovers, because it is slowly recovering. The BBC are now forecasting that a 5-quarter recession of the UK economy, which began in Q3 2022. So that should be ending towards the end of this year. So there's definitely green shoots. The business investment forecast is that we're going to grow by 4.2% in 2022 and have a contraction of 3% in 2023, and then it increase again by 1.4% in 2024. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens when the autumn statement comes out. PwC in June wrote a nice report, which again, I'll send the links to everybody. Okay, we continue to expect inflation to fall this year, returning to single digits as it already has by the middle of the year, and then round about 3 to 4% by the end of the year. They went on to say, though, that economic inactivity has remained irrelevant since the beginning of the pandemic. Periodically, it's been driven by health reasons and other factors, and nonetheless, it's the legal pandemic that's masking the wider issues of the UK economy, and it's expecting to face sort of in the coming decade, and that's the aging population. Specifically, all things remained equal, what they said was we expect the economic inactivity relative to the population age to rise by 2.4 million by 2030, but with 90% of this coming from the 65 plus age group. So it says there's a big problem there, and therefore they're saying it's critical now for policymakers to continue to increase their existing workforce productivity and for businesses to better define their recruitment strategies and offering to appeal to and cater to a wider demographic. So it really sort of shows that things are starting to sort of change. The financial crash, if you think about that in 2008, firms closure were widespread and jobs losses were huge during that period. However, the rate of unemployment at that time was at 5.2% in 2008, at a high of 8.4% in 2011. Today, it stands at 4.2%. So we're nowhere near the height of the 2008 financial crash. So it says the overall picture of 2024 is growth. It's not going to return to the same levels, but net export, household spending, business investment will continue and have a positive growth, although it'll be lacking in real strength and it will take some time to grow back. So obviously it says to the UK that we're in a real sort of different position to the rest of the world. We are getting a little bit left behind by competitors, but once our economic recession abates, what they're saying is that our growth will soon catch them up. So it's about now that we need to sort of learn to see what's going on. So I'm joined by Dave and Heather. Paul is away this week, as we said, and this is a recording. So I'm going to throw in the first question. It'll be an interesting first question. Okay. How can recruitment leaders proactively assess their stability and resilience of their client relationships as the UK economy gradually recovers?
So I think it's a great opening question, Howard. And for me, it's something that we do talk about quite regularly on our webinars, and that's really about making sure you have close relationships with your clients, so that your client relationships aren't just based on the vacancies that they've got with you currently, but actually that you're talking to your clients, that you're building relationships with them, that you're listening to them, that you're building that trusted relationship that says you're part of their strategic conversation, so that you know exactly where they're at. Because those statistics that you're talking about there at the beginning, they're really interesting statistics, but there has been a bit of a disconnect, hasn't there, between the economy and its ups and downs and recruitment and its ups and downs, and the relationship hasn't been quite as direct necessarily as it has been in the past, for lots and lots of reasons, primarily I think to do with the unemployment rate being the way you describe in those stats. So I think it's that talking to your clients, not just about their current vacancies, but making sure you have a relationship where you're in a strategic conversation with them so that you understand their long-term thinking, their long-term plans, their link between their success and their recruitment plans, and more importantly, listening to your clients. So really hearing what they're saying about what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, Heather. There's no question about that. And I'm still amazed at how many consultants at the desk continue to take orders without trying to get meetings. And there is always the pushback, oh, it's very difficult to get to see them. But most of it, in my experience, is about desire and confidence. I'm not sure I'm confident enough to want to go and see the client. And by see, I do mean meet. We can all do Zoom. We know that works very, very effectively. But culture and relationships often come by face-to-face meetings. And I think that most of the people who are buying the services that we supply are happy to meet us face-to-face where they can, if they get asked. It's just that we rarely ask. And I think post-pandemic, since the world of Zoom has happened, it's so easy to meet online on Zoom, and that works, of course it does. But where you can build relationships, strong, in-depth relationships, where you can understand the culture of how the company works, and they can understand the culture of how your recruitment business works and how you are going to supply the talent, the search, the RPO, whatever services it is that you supply, do they understand how you tick, how you work? And the only real way you can get to do that is to be in front of them face to face. And if you can do that in the coming weeks and months as we get ready for a better 2024, then you'll be ahead of the game. Absolutely.
I think it's an interesting thing that we're all planning and we're all putting certain plans into place. I think for me, what the your conversation there about confidence, Dave, and going out and seeing clients. Yeah, there's lots of clients that have what we class as a keyboard recruiter that sat behind the keyboard, sat behind social media, and it's the people that are seeing that having the biggest growth this year that they've actually gone out and seen their clients. But what it's also about is what I think it's about for them. It's the understanding their client survival plan, because they will have a plan to combat the economy and what's going on with the economy. And that will include what their labour force landscape is going to look like over the next 6, 12, 18 months. And I think we've then got to start to look again what jobs we need to have to replace, what jobs are like to be lost, what new jobs are like to be introduced into our client base. And I think it's once we start to understand that, then we start to then have that more stable relationship and understand which clients are going to be resilient and which clients are not. As always know, as people come out of any form of recession, some clients stumble out of it, some clients walk out of it, and some clients sprint out of it. And so if we're spending all our time with clients that are stumbling out of the recession, then we're going to be stumbling too. So I think understanding our client survival plan and what their economic workforce plan is going to be over the next 6, 12, 18 months is really important, because if not, then you just, it's finger in the air time, isn't it? With which clients you actually work with and which clients you deal with. And the best way to do that, as Dave said, is get out to see your clients face to face and really work on them. Let's look at that in the context of the economic rebound. What key elements will differentiate strong and enduring client relationships from those transactional ones?
For me, it's about that consultant part of the job title. So it's where you have a relationship with a client that involves you communicating with them and meeting with them face to face, as Dave says, not just when they've got vacancies, so that they understand that you add value as a subject matter specialist in the times when they're hiring and the times when they're not. So there is way more to your value add to your client than just being a vacancy filler. And that's really about you as an organization valuing your own contribution. So feeling the confidence in yourself as a subject matter specialist, knowing that you're not just a vacancy filler, and making sure that your development activities with your teams helps them to feel that confidence too. So that just because somebody's a junior consultant or a trainee consultant doesn't mean that they can't be out in front of a client with somebody senior, because they're going to be soaking up all of that knowledge and experience of going and seeing what happens at a more senior level. So strategically thinking about how do you create the confidence to create those enduring client partnerships that happen not just when there's a vacancy to fill. So how do you role model that for people to understand? Because for me, that's what differentiates an enduring client partnership, is one where it's not just when they've got a vacancy, that you're fundamentally part of their bank of specialist knowledge that they use to drive their business forward. You know, you're part of their solution, you're part of their strategic thinking.
And I don't know, Heather and Howard, I don't know that there's any research done on this, but I have a feeling that our recruitment industry has gotten much younger in the past few years as we've hired a number of fresh-faced people to our business. So the reset that we've gone through in the past year or so, we've been there and done it. We've seen it a number of times, but a lot of people who are working in our businesses now haven't. So there's just a chance that they don't really understand the value of an in-depth client relationship. So one of the questions, if you're a sales leader on this webinar, or if you run the business, a really good question to ask your consultants, be they 18 months into the business, into the recruitment business, let alone your business, or 18 years, how do you know you have a really good client relationship? And get them to write it down, or just to get them to chat to you about what that relationship looks like. Because they may think they have, and you, with your experience, because you'd have been in the business a lot longer and seen these things before, will be able to really assess, yeah, that person does feel quite close to those people. And often, and I've said this so many times, so forgive me if you've heard me say it before, we have relationships with individuals within clients, not with clients.
Yeah.
You may know 2 or 3 people at the main client site. You may know 5 or 6, but you don't know Ford. You don't know Centrica. You don't know. You've got to understand that. It's obvious if we've been around a while to us that we know that. But for younger people coming in, for the new people in at the desks, that's quite new. They think they know the client because the person they're dealing with, they've got a relationship with. So you can assess that as a more mature leader who's been in the business and been around the block a few times, because it's really important as we get ready.
I think that's really important as well, because if you're taking young people into your business who haven't worked in big organizations, that you might be their first employer.
Yeah.
So they have no idea how complex organizations are and how complex decision making is and strategy is even in a medium-sized organization, never mind a Centrica or a Ford. So understanding what is the role that procurement play in organizations, what is the role that HR and internal recruitment play, and how do they interact, and how does the internal politics impact decision making, and what are their talent, to give them the confidence of understanding that they've got to get out and see what the business is and looks
but I think
like.
that this starts in 2 areas, though, doesn't it? This starts with the fragility of your client relationship, because everyone thinks they've got a far better relationship with the clients. And we've done this, and Dave, me and you've done this with a number of clients. I've done it with lots of clients over the last 18 months, where we've gone in and actually looked at the relationships that they have with their clients, and we're thinking they're thinking they're at loyalty and trust and loyalty and advocacy, when actually they're at acceptance. And they don't realize that, and that's a massive problem. So that's the first thing they've got to understand, is where their relationship with is their clients. And I say this for both clients and for recruiters. I think general recruitment agencies have become this eyes down recruitment marketplace, where they're looking at the feet, and that's where today starts. And today's at your feet, and I'm looking for the jobs, where we should be eyes up and looking at what's coming towards us and what we can do and what we can change from our clients. But then also we have to change the client's mindset, because the clients have their eyes down recruitment policy, where they may have planned everything, but they haven't told you until the day that they need it, or within the 3 or 4 days that they need it, or the 4 weeks that they need it, etc. We've got to change from this eyes down recruitment methodology to an eyes up recruitment methodology. We've got to understand our fragility of our client relationships, and then look at how we can build enduring relationships over a certain period of time. And that's not by just being reactive to what they're throwing at us every day. It's about being proactive and seeing what's coming down the line and helping them shape what's coming down the line. So we've got to start to think about how we adapt, because as everything knows, when we come out of recession, it's those that adapt the quickest, that progress the quickest and come out of recession the quickest. It's not those that just carry on doing the same things. And whether you think you're the strongest or the fittest sort of animal in the kingdom, if you're not adapting, then you're going to lose very quickly. And that some of that adaptation has got to be about understanding your client relationship isn't as strong as it is, because if it is, they'll be ringing you and saying, how can you help us? And they're not. And then understanding that we've got to get from our eyes down recruitment methodology to an eyes up recruitment methodology as well. And that's the business leaders looking at that. But if we talk about that, Dave, Heather, we've all been through lots and lots of recessions, business downturns, etc., etc. But could you share sort of examples of successful strategies that recruitment agencies have employed to adapt their services and engage approaches based on their clients' changing needs during this recovery stage?
Well, how about the strategy of common sense?
Yeah. Hang on, Dave. That's a.
Is that too?
I think that's a big step, Dave.
No, well, that's my I haven't been to Harvard Business School response. You know what? Often recruiters make recruitment so complicated. And actually, it isn't that complicated. We are that broker. We are the people that find the talent or the recruitment service for the client that knows they need it but aren't sure where they're going to get it from. So for me, the common sense bit is, are you as a consultant, and Heather used that word earlier on, are you as a consultant advising and educating your clients to the state of the market, the tempo of the market, what's going on in the sector that we work? You know, Ford make cars. I wouldn't be the first person to be able to tell Ford how to make a car, but could I find them an engineer to help them on the site, in the shifts, in the way they do it? Of course we could, because that could be the sector of which I have the knowledge. So for me, the common sense bit is making sure that we are advising our clients, educating our clients, keeping them up to date with what's going on, ensuring that they know the trends of what's happening, which skills are in demand, what the prices are where we know it. Anything that just adds a value that is absolutely real for the client, for that sector, for the sector that they're in. And that's relatively easy to do. You don't need a huge marketing budget to do that. You need a bit of tenacity, and you need to just create something that they know will be of value. And if you're not sure what they value, going back to Heather's point about relationships, then ask them what it is they value. How can we help you? Because we are coming into, I haven't used the word recession for this year. I've used the word reset. It's a similar thing. It's semantics, Howard, as you said. It's just different words. But we are coming into a period of growth. So our clients are going to have to know where they're going to get it from. Yeah. Because they don't want to be a month behind everybody else or 2 months behind. And the same for us as recruiters. We don't want to be a month behind everybody who is already getting closer to the clients. So just use a common sense approach, get closer, understand what's going on.
Yeah. And one of the nice approaches I saw from one of my clients up in the Northeast was showing the client that they were part of the solution to addressing the candidate shortage. So they started linking in with organisations that train people at a fairly junior level. But it was about creating this impression that they were part of the solution. So they started providing bursaries for people to access training who might not be able to access it, and so increasing the number of people who were able to get into those training schemes. And then they used that for some fantastic marketing. Actually, it didn't cost them a huge amount of money to provide those bursaries, but it created this amazing engagement with their clients, because they could encourage their clients to do the same. And it just was a really lovely way of showing they were part of the talent acquisition solution, by getting more people to join that particular market. So that was a really nice approach. The other one I liked was, obviously a bit more personal, but actually was spending time getting consultants talking to HR directors when they're not selling to them. So very often they're dealing with HR directors. They have no idea what an HR director does or what their other responsibilities are. And so actually being able to share that knowledge with consultants and go, well, this is what a normal day is like, and this is the issues that they're dealing with, and these are their priorities, actually helped consultants to have better conversations with HR directors. So I think that was a great piece of direct engagement improvement, was about increasing the knowledge that consultants have. So there's a couple of kind of micro ways in which people changed what they were doing.
I think what you're talking about, and what we sort of worked very heavily on in 2008 to 2012, was our alignment to the client, and understanding how our services aligned to the client's services and what they needed. So then we could start to offer things like talent advisory. We could then start to compartmentalize our sale to them, and we could then start to give them things that actually added benefit to them, rather than just doing the bog standard 9-to-5 recruitment. And we found that we took a lot of market share at that stage, because a lot of other recruitment agencies were just ringing up and finding out, when are you recruiting again? What jobs have you got? And when that wasn't really what they were interested in, they were interested in what's happening in the marketplace. How can we give them things that will help them, come out of this recession or reset phase? How do they recover quickly? And it was those type of things that we then started to coach our people on. And it was, what we found was that the more we coached our people at the time, I think we ended up with the phrase, the more we look after our people, the more our people will look after our clients. The more we will look after our clients, the more our clients will look after us. And so it was all this sort of circle that we started to create. And so it started with looking at our people first. Have they got the capability to go and speak to the clients about the things that we're talking about? Have got the capability to talk to HR directors, to C-suite people, and talk about what's happening in the economy, rather than just talking about a recruitment process, etc. And that was the difference in alignment. And it was those things that we started to really sort of drive into the business. And so it was, look after our people first. They will then look after the clients, and the clients will then ultimately look after us, in that full circle. But it takes time to do that. But it also takes courage to step away from that, have you got a job type scenario, and we're back to eyes down recruitment rather than eyes up, what's looking at solutions and what's coming up. If we looked at then at sort of managing the dependency risk is critical. So we're all dependent on certain number of clients, etc. Now, especially in certain times, what strategies or practices can recruitment leaders implement to minimize the risk and ensure that we have a diverse client portfolio?
This one's a fascinating one, I think, because when you've been in recruitment a while, you come across these sorts of risks all the time, don't you? Where you suddenly realize that your golden goose that's laying golden eggs has very limited number of relationships in your organization. So I think you have to look at your golden geese really hard and question how long that relationship's going to last. What's it dependent on? So if your relationship is only centered on one consultant in your business or one hiring manager in your client, you're really going to struggle if either of those people move on, and they do, and they will. And so making sure that you spread your risk by having deeper, wider relationships in your organization and in your client organization, I think can really diversify your risk. So, taking on an Amazon, for example, it's great, it's fantastic. But if you lose an Amazon, it's really damaging. So, looking those golden geese in the face and going, is this really going to lay me golden eggs? What happens if I lose that single relationship that I have? Well, what's the damage to my organization?
I think I've always classed them as cash cows, and then have you got cash calves that are going to grow into a cash cow? Because at some point the cash cow is going to finish at some point, and from there. And
I just think we can be blinded by the immediate opportunity, and we just don't question what might happen, and is this really good for my business?
I think the way I always looked at it, and I've looked at this in a number of ways, as I always look at the 60-40 rule. So when you sort of come into a downturn and you start to look at the upturn, if we looked at our businesses that build with us last year, you can almost guarantee 60% will build with us again, 40% won't. So have we got a mechanism that then finds that new 40%? And then what are we doing to save the 60%, 80%? Therefore, we start to bring growth. And so it is about having a stringent new business strategy. And it is about an understanding which clients are likely to stop recruiting, likely to disappear, and those that are going to carry on and what's going on. And then who do you replace them with? And there's that old footage, comment that if your 3 leading clients are more than 30% of your gross profit, then there's a problem. Well, we speak to a lot of clients where it's not 30%, it's 50, 60, 70% of their gross profit comes from 1 or 2 clients, which puts massive vulnerability. But also the same when you look at that, when you were talking about there, Heather, was the same with your consultants. If your top consultants have 50% of your gross profit and they walk, what's going to happen? So it's having those risks assessed and looking at those risks to then say, right, what do I do? So I think it's having a stringent new business strategy to replace your dying clients, but also bring new blood to the business. So when you start to think about it, you're shrinking the reliance on your big clients by bringing more new business in, and therefore you're shrinking the reliance on your major consultants because you have other consultants that will eat up that opportunities or other opportunities from there.
I think my answer to this question, Ad, is more of an internal one, because I think you've both answered the external one brilliantly. This is a really good time, if you haven't got a good relationship with your finance team and your FD or CFO or whoever she is or he is, to make sure that you're building that, because they will keep your business on the straight and narrow. All of us who run businesses know what's going on, but sometimes you do end up with a client that you've enjoyed great success with, and suddenly you find they're 50% of your business. Well, that may be okay for a short period of time. Your CFO or you would have the relationship with your bank or your factoring company, whoever it may be in terms of funding, and just make sure you're staying close to those people. And just make sure that you and your finance director are completely aligned in what the strategy of the business is. It may be that you say, 60% for now is okay, but we know we've got to get that to 40 or 30, and we'll do that by boosting other clients rather than taking more on from that one particular client. And it can be a calendar thing. It can be for a period of time, 6, 8 months, whatever it may be. But overall things are okay. So this is where your CFO is the person who really matters in your organization. And if you as the founder are also the CFO, then stay close with your advisor. If you've got an advisor, a support person, a mentor, whoever it is, and share what you're going through on the numbers with them as well, so they can bring an angle to support you.
I think if we start to move things on a little bit, we're talking about what's valuable to the companies, what's valuable to the recruitment agencies. So I think there's a lot of data-driven decision making, and the emphasis is on the value of that tool. So how can recruitment agencies effectively leverage data to strengthen their client relationships and then gain a competitive edge during this sort of economic recovery?
Oh, Howard, I get so conflicted with this question, because I know there's a right answer, but then there's the answer that I see. There is so much data available to us now. There are so many software companies and organizations that try to sell us the latest bit of data, the latest bit of kit, that often as leaders, I find that we could be drowning in data and then measuring everything that we never used to measure because we can. And we end up focusing so much on data that we forget the bit of the first part of the webinar about relationships and culture and management and leadership. So I don't want to decry in any way the importance of data and how important it is for our consultants at the desk in the way that we're measuring our ROI in marketing, in whatever stat that we use. I guess my answer is a little bit of a warning. Don't allow yourself to be drowned in data and forget the human side of the fact that we are recruitment consultants. We are about people, and we need data to help us and to support us. But if it starts to become the ultimate driver of everything we do, we may miss the relationship side, which is what will sustain us long term.
And I get the reason behind that answer, Dave. I really do get the reason behind that. But I just think that recruitment businesses are inherently people businesses, and we're really good at the people side of it. And we're really good at the relationship side of it. It's very often relationship driven sales, but we're really bad at using the data. And so I'm not sure that we should be discouraging people from using the data. I agree with the shiny, happy, what's next and what people are going to sell us, and avoiding that. But I do think we don't use the data we've got because we're relationship driven. And I think that there's some amazing information we've got that we can share with clients that we sometimes are scared to share with clients. So we know things like how long it takes us to all those ratios about how long it takes from us submitting CVs to them or introducing them to candidates to them making a decision, what impact their ability or inability to give us feedback quickly or to provide us with interview slots, or we've got loads of data on candidate journey that we can share with even with big clients. We can share between hiring managers, and we can help the HR team to understand which of the hiring managers are making their lives difficult, making it difficult for them to acquire. So I think I don't think if you took a survey of recruiters across the all the different markets, that we could say that they're using too much data. I think they need to be using way more and sharing way more with clients as part of showing that they're experts.
I think I've got a foot in both camps there, because I think the data doesn't lie, and I think Heather's right that we are appalling at data. And I think what we tend to do is lump our data all together and then aren't sure what we're to do. And then data paralysis hits in. We've got so much data, we don't know what we're looking at. So I think the first thing we do, you start to separate your data into three areas. Your recruitment data, so how you recruit, so time to fill, all those type of things. You then start to look at the data that tells you where your blockages are in the recruitment processes. And then what data can you give to your clients that have nothing to do with your recruitment process that will enable the client to do certain things, etc. So I always think about data, and I'll go back to sort of 2008, and I'll go back to sort of 2001, when sort of with the recessions were sort of hitting sort of largely. What we did was we had data on all our roles. And so we weeded out the poor roles that we knew we'd never fill. And what we tended to find that we were getting lots of these roles because they were hard to fill roles. So we started to weed those out, but then put an education process in for the client to actually get the clients more on an exclusive basis, because we would tell them what was going on. We then start to look at things that were changing in the marketplace. If you think about clients nowadays, let's go. I was with a client the other day, and we were talking about their reduction in their temp workers. But their reduction in the temp workers was nothing to do with the recruitment processes and their ability to fill the jobs. The recruitment process had failed because the recruitment company had failed to actually get hold of the client and understand what's changing in the client. And what's changing in the client was they were pickers, packers, and collectors. And what's happening? AI was coming in. Where they had 150 staff on site 2 years ago, they now have 30 staff on site because most of it is done by AI. So we start to think about what automation is going to come into a client and take jobs, what greening effect is going to come in. And so things are going to change. And it's these data decisions that we can start to look at that with clients. Where certain jobs are going to diminish, it will grow jobs in other areas. So are our recruitment agencies understanding that, and therefore can they again adapt to that? So it's not about using the data just to improve your recruitment process. It's about that eyes up recruitment foresight and saying what's coming down the line. If I'm supplying engineers at the moment, certain types of engineers are going to be redundant within 5 years because AI will take over that role. But the greening effect will give that opportunity for those engineers to potentially transfer into a different type of role. Have we started that process? Have we started that conversation with our client, etc.? All of these sort of things need to sort of be discussed and looked at, and data will sort of guide you where you should be going rather than where you shouldn't be going. And a lot of agencies don't look at the data and they just plow on because they're head down. So should you elaborate or could you elaborate on the role of communication and transparency in building and maintaining robust client relationships, especially in navigating economic shifts that may impact their sort of hiring needs and cause instant changes to certain things?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one,
I'm
Howard.
pausing, Heather. I'm sitting here pausing at the answer.
This is a very simplistic. This is a very simplistic answer, but and it might be wider than the question intends, Howard. So I apologise if I'm getting the wrong end of the stick. But we just need to be honest with our clients.
Yeah.
How often do we say yeah we can do that because we want them to have the vacancy with us, and actually, we need to be really honest. The clients need to be honest with us, and we need to be honest with the clients about how difficult filling particular jobs is, the progress that we're going to make, the impact that their behaviours and our behaviours are going to have on what we're doing, about what we do, about what their different options are. And I think you've talked a lot, Howard, about how do we differentiate what we do and how we sell. So I think for me, it's just about being really, really honest about our relationships with our clients. You can't have a robust client relationship if you're not honest with them. If you just say yes when you really mean maybe. But I don't know if that's what you're intending with the question. Oh, we've lost the sound, Howard.
Any answer's a good answer, irrespective whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer. It's an answer, and that's what we're looking at. There's no wrong and right answers to these questions. There are just your answers. Dave,
in your question, Howard, was transparency, and absolutely, the transparent recruiter, the transparent recruitment leader with their clients is going to enjoy a longer-term relationship. So at every stage. And I think part of the comes back to what we started off with the webinar is your answer assumes there is plenty of communication with the client, and often there isn't. So be honest, be transparent, be clear, be concise, provide them with education. But most of all, in that, be speaking to them, be communicating with them, be talking to them, be understanding, listen to what they're going through, both as individuals who may be running a project, who may be having difficulty hiring, who may be having difficulty personally that is affecting work. Well, our job is to listen and to absorb and to retain that information and to make sure we're supporting clients, because it goes back to my point earlier, clients are individuals. And as long as we're communicating with them, then we stand a better chance of a longer term success.
It's interesting. When I wrote the question, again, as I say quite often, when I write the question, I suddenly start to think, oh God, I've got to answer that question as well. And I thought this is we talked about sort of things about, we should have more face-to-face communication with our clients, more proper communication. But I just looked at that communication and thought, actually, there's a lot more different ways to communicate with our clients, because they might not want to see us as much as we want to see them, and vice versa. So things like newsletters, market insights, white papers, all sorts of different written, verbal, electronic communication that we can be doing constantly that helps our client move forward becomes really important. And I always think this is what I class as my third KPI. This is about you becoming the key person of influence in your marketplace. So if your client wants to know something that's happening in the marketplace, they should be coming to talk to you about it, because you should be the font of all knowledge of what's happening within your marketplace. And that might be some written stuff that you've done. It might be some market insight that you've got. And so our communication becomes multifaceted. It's not just about picking up the phone or emailing. It's about all of those things combined. But what's the value? If you're just picking up the phone to say hello, there's very little value for the client in that. But if you're picking up the phone to say, did you read that white paper? Have you looked at the newsletter that we just said, this is what's happening in the marketplace? Oh, this is what happened. We just found out about your competitors. That's a very different type of communication. And that's all about that transparency. But it's about what we talked about earlier, about the alignment with our client. If we align ourselves properly with our client, then we should be able to give them this type of information, and that should be of benefit to them. And therefore they see us as a prospect and not as a suspect, and that becomes a real sort of thing. So last question, this is an interesting one. As the recruitment sort of landscape evolves and we start to come out as green shoots start to grow, how can recruitment leaders balance short-term revenue goals, because that's the thing that's generally normally drives them, against the long-term vision of cultivating an enduring client relationship that contributes to sustained growth over a long period of time?
I love this question. There's some really interesting assumptions in it about how recruitment leaders think and behave. Howard, is great. It's a great question. I think generally we're really, really good at short-term revenue goals. And we're even really good at putting in long-term, short-term revenue goals. So what our short-term goals are going to be next year as well.
Long-term, short-term revenue goals.
Well, you know what I mean. So we're saying in a year's time, this is what I want my revenue to be. But that's not the same as a strategy about cultivating enduring client relationships, is it? And so I think sometimes our strategies are just about revenue. And actually what this question is saying to me is we're screaming out for our strategy to include things like having a long-term vision of cultivating client relationships because it contributes to sustained growth. And it's really understanding the link between those enduring client relationships and having sustained growth, because you can't do one without the other. Your short-term growth will be only that. It will be short-term revenue if you don't think about your long-term relationships. So for me, we have to have a strategy as an industry, as an organization, that thinks about what it is we're trying to do with cultivating our relationships with our clients. Do we understand our clients' needs? Do we understand how we add value to them? And do we understand why that matters? So having a strategy that we really think about how we're going to move that stuff forward, rather than thinking in the short term all the time just about revenue.
I agree totally, Heather. I think also part of the question it had, as the recruitment landscape evolves, I think as a business leader, you have to ask yourself the question, has my vision changed because the recruitment landscape has evolved? Because it's absolutely vital that your business has a vision, that your people have a purpose, and that's tied in together. That may be a few years away, that may be a long-term goal, that may be 10 years away. I don't know what that looks like for your individual business, but there will always be a short-term need for cash, for profit, for success in whatever your vision is. But so many companies don't have a vision, or if they did, their vision is the same as it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. Yeah, and it hasn't changed because of the changing recruitment landscape. So I think a very salient question as a business leader to ask is your vision fit for purpose for what you want personally, for what your business can deliver? And if it is, great. If it's not, where do you need to change it? And if you do need to change it, how does that affect the people at your desk? How does that affect the people supporting your business? And therefore, when you've answered that question, what does that do for client relationships? And do you have the right clients? Are you dealing with the right clients? Are the clients that you're working with going to get you to the destination that you hope to get to? And if they're not, what are you going to do about it?
The thing is that question, isn't it? Is it what's the difference between a strategy and a budget? I think most people have their revenue goals all written out, which is their short-term goals, but that's it. There is then no strategy that sits behind that. And when we talk about what we're doing, I remember having we had a webinar probably about 2.5, 3 years ago now, and we talked about the 20 assets within your business. And to me, this is an opportunity if you want to start to build your business, add order to my business, And again, we do lots of audits of clients, and we audit them and we look at what's making them money, what's slowing them down, what's costing them money, and what are their assets doing for them. And I think the short term is, yes, we need to have a short term vision on revenue generation, because that's what brings business to us and brings money that we can then start to invest back into the business to help the business grow quicker. But without having a sustained plan of what you're doing with your assets, then it's really interesting. So whether your technology is an asset, your client list is an asset, your contracts with your clients an asset, etc., your consultants an asset, your training development's an asset. All these things are things that we should be reviewing. We don't have to implement them or change them straight away, but we have to put them into a process that says over a period of time, we need to develop that, I need to upskill that, I need to change that. But to do that, that short-term revenue generation has to happen, but it will not help sustain growth if you don't do the other side as well. So it's not chicken and egg, it's both type scenario from there. So
100%.
It's a really sort of interesting view. But as we start to accelerate, as lots of people did when we start to come out of COVID, there were so many jobs and it was eyes down, right, let's fill. And then this year's happened and a lot of people said, oh my God, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd done this. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here, that short-term balance versus long-term balance and long-term vision that creates sustained growth. That's it for today. Dave, Heather, thank you very much for your input. Much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed today's session. Next week, we are not here next week because we are all at the Expo. It's the Expo in Birmingham. So if you're down there on the Wednesday, feel free to drop us a line, a text, a call or anything, or just bump into us and give us a hug, whatever it be. We look forward to seeing you all next week. Dave, Heather, have a good day and I'll see you all later.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.